Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Horn, and this is a draft presentation on the role of artificial intelligence in the curriculum of EAC 217. I want to argue that AI can be a component of a structured learning process when done intentionally, and want to show how AI can function as a learning partner rather than a harm to learning. In support, I'll draw on three concepts that repeatedly surface during my research: cognitive vigilance, cognitive offloading, and desirable difficulty. In EAC 217, students analyze text by examining characterization, narrative perspective, and other techniques of the author. They learn the ability to interpret not only literary texts, but also within their own lives. The challenge then, as I'll show, is determining how an AI partnership can support interpretation without undermining the intellectual work required to achieve it. Current research is confirming the role AI tools can fill as an intellectual partner in transformative learning experiences. The research suggests that interacting with AI can create cognitive disruptions, which challenge assumptions and interpretations of knowledge and frameworks of understanding. Using AI tools as intellectual partners in structured, vigilant ways can help students deepen their thinking and extend their capabilities. Integrating AI partnerships into the curriculum requires designs that are used to support learning and not performance. Performance gains do not necessarily indicate that learning has occurred. This observation leads me to what I consider the first action of AI integration: separating process from product. Research is confirming that the best use of AI in education is as a conversation partner. Dialogues with an AI chatbot can add dynamic opportunities to challenge student assumptions, and assessments could challenge students in their thinking, prioritizing the learning goal. If conversations with an AI partner in the process of learning is valuable, how can it be done with pedagogy in mind and the harms of AI taken into account? This brings us to our first concept that applies in order to solve this problem, which is cognitive vigilance. Cognitive vigilance is when individuals maintain critical awareness when evaluating information. Think of a radar operator staying awake. Today, one concern of AI is that students may accept responses in conversations of AI without any scrutiny. They may assume that because an answer is coherent, it's necessarily correct. If a cognitive vigilance can be built into assessment design, then we can avoid this harm. This can be achieved by encouraging students to evaluate AI responses rather than simply accepting them, by incentivizing them to consider their own judgment in responding to AI conversations. Instead of prioritizing answers, students can be prompted to answer, why do I accept or reject this interpretation? What evidence supports this? Or what evidence challenges it? Students can be guided toward the vigilance. They can be guided to evaluate AI outputs in their conversations. The next threat to AI partnerships is cognitive offloading. Now, have you ever used a calculator? Cognitive offloading happens when we outsource cognition to an external tool. We offload cognition because it's a rational adaptation to incentives within a cognitive process, and is not necessarily a detriment to learning. Sometimes it can be a benefit when it frees up mental resources for other tasks. The crucial harm to learning is that AI poses is that it's unlike a calendar app. It's not like a calculator. AI tools offload higher order thinking like analysis, interpretation, and problem solving. This is essential to humans functioning in a civil society. The issue is not whether students offload cognition. The issue is what cognition is being offloaded. When use of AI is unstructured, students may defer too quickly to the tool instead of engaging in their own analysis. Cognitive offloading is not a failure of mind, but rather a rational adaptation to incentives. Therefore, tasks should be designed with this in mind. The third concept here is desirable difficulty, which is the precept that most learning often benefits from friction. Conditions that make learning somewhat more challenging may often improve long-term retention. In simple terms, friction is not always a problem. Friction is the condition required for durable learning. As educators, we should be cautious about eliminating every obstacle. A difficulty becomes desirable when it aligns with learning outcomes, when it requires meaningful thinking, remains achievable, and encourages retrieval of knowledge. These principles lead me to my 4 design recommendations. These are to preserve desirable difficulty, to require cognitive vigilance, to avoid harmful cognitive offloading, and to assess evidence of learning processes. Taken together, for a general consumption, the research suggests several conclusions. That AI should support learning processes more than assessment products. Students should evaluate AI outputs rather than consume them. Cognitive offloading should extend thinking rather than replace it. And perhaps most importantly, students should remain intellectually responsible for the judgments that they make. So I'd like to look at a couple of examples now to illustrate my point. One is from our seminars, and the second one I designed as an example for EAC 217. So an example that helped crystallize my thinking early in the seminars comes from an assignment integrating AI by RJ Kemp and Iman Haji Hassani from our seminars. In the task, students were asked to recreate a photograph in 2 ways. First, by using a camera with a classmate, and second, through generative AI. What makes this assignment interesting is that neither method replaces the other. Students still engage with composition, lighting, and framing. They collaborate and edit their work, avoiding harmful cognitive offloading. At the same time, they discuss methods of photography in their AI prompting and learn to critically examine generated outputs, maintaining cognitive vigilance. The educational value lies not in creating an image, but in analyzing the decisions involved in creating it. This example demonstrates how AI can become a reliable intellectual partner. Now, when confronting EAC 217, I realized that assessments historically emphasized the final written responses of students, who demonstrated literary analysis through written arguments. While this approach has strengths, feedback was often concentrated at the end of the task. Students were rewarded for the product. Consequently, there were relatively few incentives for cognitive vigilance or to foster desirable difficulty throughout the learning process, and incentives towards cognitive offloading were actually present. To address this issue, I developed the following sample task with an AI partnership. In part 1, students independently identify a literary technique from the text and explain their reasoning before using AI. This step preserves desirable difficulty because students must retrieve knowledge, select evidence, and construct an initial interpretation. And this is connected to the learning goals. In part 2, students engage with an AI chatbot now using a structured prompt such as the one on the screen. Note that students enter the conversation with an idea already formed. The AI is responding to student thinking rather than generating the thinking. In part 3, students reflect on the interaction with AI outputs. Did the AI identify the same technique? What evidence did it present? Where did they disagree or agree? These questions reinforce cognitive vigilance by requiring evaluation and judgment. Finally, students submit 3 artifacts: their initial analysis, the AI conversation, and their reflection. The assessment, therefore, captures evidence from the thinking process rather than merely the final conclusion. The benefits of this approach are significant. Students compare their interpretations, critique AI-generated feedback, and revisit their own assumptions. Learning becomes dialogic and involves a cognitive disruption. At the same time, the design reduces misuse because students must document each stage of their thinking. If students submit an initial analysis an AI conversation, and a reflection, academic integrity becomes embedded within the assessment structure itself. This preserves the design goals of maintaining cognitive vigilance, avoiding cognitive offloading, and fostering desirable difficulty. Now, AI presents genuine challenges in learning, and the landscape is fraught with harms of AI use. But it also creates opportunities to rethink long-standing assumptions about assessments and learning. If we can proceed with an optimism that matches the energy of the times surrounding AI and remain vigilant ourselves, we can potentially innovate new ways of learning through the use of technology, as Laura McInnes presented in the seminars. So, my final thought is this, that generative AI has not created a problem in assessment design. Rather, it's exposed a problem that already existed. For many years, higher education has often rewarded products while assuming that learning occurred during the process. If we design assessments to make thinking visible, preserve desirable difficulty, encourage cognitive vigilance, and avoid harmful cognitive offloading, then AI can become a valuable educational partner. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. I welcome your comments or feedback, and I'll see you on September 2nd.